Hey guys, this is Afik. In the last section, we've set up Vue.JS extension for our PHP environment, and inside our Laravel project, we have the V8 engine to execute a JavaScript code, and the rendered output is the one we send to the welcome view, and this is the section you see over here. Now, in order to render Vue.js on the server, we need an npm package called vue-server-renderer. We'll go back into our terminal, and this is our project vue-SSR. We can do npm install save vue-server-renderer. That's the name of the package. Let's give it a minute to install. Okay, now that we have this package installed, we can go ahead and open up our project in Visual Studio Code again. I'll go into my resources, assets, JS components, and I'll change the example component to app.vue. This is the name I want for the main component. I can go into my app.js. I don't need the bootstrap file to be loaded at all. We do need Vue, but we will use ES6 imports instead. So we do import Vue from Vue, and we can remove this part, and now we can import our component. So import app from components app.vue. Okay, the next step will be to take out this vue.component render code. We can imagine that the app.vue file is it's the root of our application. So what we want to do is to tell the new Vue instance to render this component by default, and this will be the file we want to render both in the client and the server side. Okay, so the only change we need to make here is to export the new instance. So export default for new Vue, and now we can remove the element part and do render, and the component that we want to render is app. Okay, now let's go back into our terminal and make sure we have no errors. So npm run dev. Let's see that everything compiles. Now, when the Laravel mix compiles our code, it will create two files, one called app.js and the other one is app.css. We want to use both of them inside our welcome view. We'll go here, and I think we can pretty much remove everything inside the style here and add a link. The asset will be css app.css, and we can do the same down here. Add another script, and the source will be asset.js app.js. Okay, now we can take out the rest of the code here because all we need is one div, and I'll give it id app. Okay, so what we have so far is basically the same thing you'll have in any Vue Laravel setup. If I'll go back into my app.js and add the element here and give it the element for the app ID and compile everything again, I believe we'll see the component inside our browser. So let's just wait for this one for a moment. Go back to the browser, refresh, and this is our example component. So nothing changed so far. Let's go back into our code and remove the element here. Now, there's one thing I want to go over with you. The Vue.js app running in the server is a bit different from the one running in the browser. The majority of the code will stay similar, but we'll need to have two separate entry points to our code, one for the server and another one for the client. The main reason for that is because not all of our browser capabilities are available in the backend. For example, there is no document or window objects in the server side, but we do have them in the browser. So in the backend, once we render components, there is no document we can mount the component into. So all the main logic of our Vue.js app will stay inside the app.js file, but we'll have to call it differently from both the server and the client entries. We would like to create two separate files, one for the client and another one for the server. Both of them will import this file. This is the root Vue instance we export from here, and we'll have it imported inside the server and the client side. But first I want to create a controller inside our Laravel application. so we can handle all the logic over there. Go back into the terminal and do PHP artisan main controller. Let's give it a name, let's say main controller. Okay, great. Let's go back into our code, into the routes/web.php. I want to grab everything from here, and let's call the new controller. So home controller, no, not home, it was main controller. And the method will be index. Let's go into our main controller and create this method right here. So index right here. And it will do the same. We just need to tell it to call Vue.js from the root and not from this local namespace. Now we can save, go back to the browser and make sure it all works, and refresh, and we'll still get the same thing. Great. Okay, now we can go back to the project and create those two entry points, one for the server and one for the client. We'll put them under the assets.js directory. Let's call the first one client.js, and for the other one server.js. Okay, now I want to remind you that inside our app.js we've removed the part that where the Vue instance is looking for an element to mount into, and the reason for that is because the server doesn't have document in it. So inside our client.js entry we'll do the same thing. We'll do the same logic we've removed from this section. So let's go into our client and import app from app. This is the app.js file, the one over here, and then we can just grab the instance and tell it to mount into the div with the ID of app. Okay, now that we have the client side entry point ready to be rendered, we can move to the server where things are getting much more interesting. The package we've installed, the vue-server-renderer, exposed the global function called render view component to string. Okay, and this method can be used in our server side to render the Vue application. Okay, so we're going to use this function inside our server.js. Let's go into this file over here, and now we can import the same app from app, and we can call this function render view component to string, and it will get the Vue instance and a callback with an error and result, and we can print the result. Now we can also print out the error if if something went wrong. You can just print error and you'll get back this string into your PHP runtime, and you can check out if something went wrong. Okay, the function print over here is part of the Vue.js extension. This method is what we use to send data from our JavaScript v8 into PHP. Okay, so if you remember, inside our main controller we've used execute string. This is the part over here, and once we use print, this rendered output goes from the JavaScript back into the variable we've assigned the output to. Okay, so now we need to modify our Laravel mix configuration to support our new entry points. We can go into the webpack mix.js, and now we have one for app.js and another one for the CSS. We don't need app.js anymore. We need one for the client, and we also need another one for the server. Okay, so assets.js server. Now Laravel Mix will create two files for us, one of them with the client entry point right here, which just imports the app.js file that we created and will create a mount to the document. And the other one is the server.js that knows how to render the component in the backend. Okay, let's go ahead and compile both of them. So npm run dev. And now we can go back into our projects, go into the public, and inside our JS, as you can see, we have two files, client and server. Okay, now we need to change inside our welcome.blade.php file. We inject the script here for JS app.js, but this is not the case anymore. We want to change app to client. We are going to use the server in the backend. Okay, let's go back into our main controller. I'll create a new function, and let's call it render. and the render will get no arguments. And now we need to set up three things before we can compile our JavaScript. The first one is to grab the vue-server-renderer package. There is a basic.js file we can use in the backend. Okay, so let's do renderer source, and we can use file get content, or we can even use the file get from Laravel. And we want to go to the base path, and inside we can visit the node modules, vue-server-renderer, and then we have the file called basic.js. Okay, so let me just write a comment in here. This is the get the vue-server-renderer script. The next step will be to get the server entry point. Now we also need to get a file, so we'll grab the logic from here. This is going to be the app source, and the file is located inside our JS server.js. Okay, finally we need to define some global variables to our node environment. Okay, so we are defining some local variables to our environment. Okay, so let's create a variable called JS, and we need a variable called process, and it will contain an object with all our environment data. So env is another object that will have a key called view env, and the value is server. Next we have node env, and the value is production. Next we'll assign this process to the global object. So this dot global equals an object that the process key is going to be equal to this object right here. Okay, I think this is all we need for now. Now we'll create a new instance of our v8 right here, and then we can start rendering all the JavaScript code we want. There are three execute statements I would like to render here, and I can save each one of them individually inside a variable and then concatenate all of them. A shorter version will be to just create a buffer to store the v8 output. We can do so in PHP by typing ob start, and it will grab all the output that comes between the ob start and to our return ob get clean. Okay, so all the code I will render between those two statements will be returned to whomever call the render function. Okay, so the first call is to v8 execute string, and we want to render the JavaScript environment variables, and we have two more. First will be to render the file for the vue-server-renderer, and the last one will be to render our app source. Okay, now that we have this method set up, we can go back here and create an HTML variable, and it will be equal to, let's say, this render. Okay, that's it. We call this function right here, and I need equal. We call this method right here that will grab the vue-server-renderer JavaScript. Then it will grab the server entry or application, and it will define some local variables to our environment inside the v8 engine. And then we are executing those three statements right here, and the string we get back here is the rendered HTML. Hopefully, we'll test it out in a moment. Okay, now we can go back into our welcome.blade.php and say that inside our div, let's spit out the rendered HTML right here. Compile everything, make sure that it works, npm run dev. Go back to the browser, refresh. Okay, so file does not exist at path. Okay, let's go back into our code, base path, and I think I need to use the public path right here. Let's save this one and try again, refresh, and undefined variable JS output, right? Because we've changed it to HTML. Okay, now will it work? right, HTML. We need to call this one HTML. Go back into welcome. Yeah, HTML here. Refresh, and now it works. Let's view the page source, and as you can see, it looks like an escaped HTML. Okay, so all we need to do to fix it is go back into our blade file and change those to 2 exclamation marks, and refresh again, and now we get HTML. Okay, this is it, guys. This is the basic setup to import Vue components into your server-side PHP Laravel application, compile the code, and send it back to your client side. What I've shown you in here, you can pretty much do it in any PHP application. You just need to install the Vue.JS extension and you're good to go. Make sure you have the V8 in the correct version and PHP over 7.0. And that is all the dependencies you need for this setup. Okay, I'll leave a link in the description below for my GitHub project for this code so you can toy around with it. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section down below. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.